Alrighty, here we are with the news of the day type thing. And there's just some rumblings, talks. We'll see what happens. The first thing out of the gate is the Panthers are still trying to trade James Reimer. They don't want to buy him out. But I figured that when Luongo retired, I figured, well, they'll keep Reimer. Nope, clean slate. So I guess Montembeault likely won himself a job for next year, as we figured he was hankering for. And they're just going to replace the starter altogether. I think there's some danger to this. Like they talked Luongo into retiring. Luongo was leaning towards it anyways, but they sat him down and said, "Yep, makes sense for both sides." And now they want to move James Reimer. Now, while I will agree that Reimer didn't have a very good season last year, and goaltending was a major flaw for the Panthers, they're taking a very, very bold strategy with this, where you're selling your fans on, we're going back to the playoffs, and we're not sure on goaltending. So, Carolina managed to bring in two goalies, and it worked for them this past season. We'll see if Florida tries a similar tack. There are still rumors that Phil Kessel may be on his way out of Pittsburgh, that Jim Rutherford really wants to, and the quote that I'm going to use here is, he wants to change the culture in the locker room. So there may be a perception that maybe the team's resting on its laurels, maybe the team's not quite as determined to win as they were a few years ago, and Kessel might be the one taking the brunt of the blame for that, like he did in Toronto before that, right? So they're still doing their best to move on from him. Roberto Luongo took out an ad, British Columbia newspaper, I believe it was the Province, thanking the fans. And this again shows what a class act Roberto Luongo is, that he spent money out of his own pocket to thank the fans for their support over the years. I think Roberto realized that a lot of the criticism that was thrown at him, it was a minority of the fans, and it was just media being media. The majority of Canuck fans know exactly how good he was for the team, so that's kind of nice. And Leaf fans have to be happy today. The deals are official. So they were reported before the draft, and now they've been made official. Kapanen, 3 years at $9.6 million, which is a $3.2 million cap. Andreas Johnsson, 4 years at $13.6 million for a $3.4 million cap. And there's the cap space that they saved by getting rid of Marleau. So getting rid of Marleau allows them to keep these two, keeps their cap down. And according to Kyle Dubas, he's very optimistic that they're going to get a deal done with Marner sooner than later. Willie Nylander feels that way as well. And maybe Nylander's had a couple of words with with Marner saying, don't make this into a holdout. Don't make this go on for too long. And we'll see how things turn out for them. Now, on other news, because the Leafs, we're going to be talking about them, I think, throughout the summer. On other news, Seattle, they were doing some looking into who they're going to hire for general manager. Now, Seattle's saying all the right things. They're not in a rush to get the logo and the name figured out and the colors. They're not in a rush to get a general manager, but I think ideally they want one this summer. I think they want a general manager in place this summer and to start coming up with some kind of a plan. Now, on a related note, teams I think are also planning ahead for Seattle. So when Vegas came in, a lot of teams had some guys exposed that they had to make trades with Vegas so they wouldn't lose them. And I think guys are already looking ahead, guys being the general managers, I think they're already looking ahead 2 years and saying, okay, what is our exposed roster going to look like in 2 years? So this is going to affect how free agents are handled. This is going to affect how guys being renewed is going to be handled. And it means no movement clauses are just absolute non-starters with veteran players. If you for instance, if there's a no movement clause on a guy like Connor McDavid or Sidney Crosby, well, yeah, you're not going to have to worry about protecting him. But if it's a third line guy, or if it's a player who's one of your better players, but a couple of years down the road, who knows, where they might have been able to get a no movement clause, no problem, without expansion being on the horizon, now that becomes basically impossible. So Seattle is affecting the NHL fabric as it's being handled in its business already. Nedeljakovic has been extended for 2 years by the Carolina Hurricanes, so he will get a shot, I would think, at a job this coming season. We'll see whether or not Carolina has faith in him as a backup if they try to replace one of McElhinney or Mrazek or bring one of the two back, or if he's going to be a number 3 and they're going to bring in 2 goalies, or again, bring back one of the duo they had this year and then somebody else. He's put up good numbers in Charlotte. I would think he's got a shot at the backup job this year. And on restricted free agent news as well, Dylan Sikura and John Quenneville have signed extensions with the Chicago Blackhawks. Of course, Quenneville was traded from New Jersey to Chicago on draft weekend, and now he signed an extension with Chicago. So we'll see how that turns out for them. Dylan Sikura didn't get a goal for them this past season, but he's still a young kid, and he's still got a chance. He's got some upside, I would think, to his game. So we'll see how that turns out for them this year. Dion Phaneuf is bound and determined to make a comeback. He's been speaking to the press about how he feels he had a down year, and he can bounce back, and he can be really, really good next year. And he just, if he gets that chance, he's going to take advantage of it. And you know what? I don't have a problem with it. When he was first traded to LA, he played really well. In a limited role, Phaneuf can be a very useful player. He is no longer the player he was. He's never going to be that again. But I think signed to a reasonable cap hit, and I think given a contract that's friendly to the team that signed him, I could see him getting a 1 or a 2 year deal. And I don't know about bounce back. I don't know that he ever gets those kinds of point totals that he had. But this was a miserable year. This was an absolutely miserable season, and I understand why LA severed the relationship. But I do think he'll get another chance. This is the National Hockey League. Guys regularly get tryouts. They get the lower money contracts, the kind of proof you can still play kind of contracts. And sometimes a veteran player has a huge bounce back that is unexpected. So maybe Phaneuf ends up on that list. Speaking of guys that need bounce backs, Cam Talbot. His name's been attached to Calgary in more than one article I've read, more than one source. Cam Talbot potentially going in to Calgary with the idea that he believes he can bounce back as well, and he can be a very good goaltender. He thinks he just had a bad year, and maybe the Flames, having seen him a lot down the road in Edmonton, figure, yeah, he had a bad year. I like Talbot, but if it's Riddick and Talbot this year for Calgary, Riddick's going to have to step up and play, I would think, 50-55 games. And I'm just saying that in all honesty. I think Talbot could be fine, but I think you've got to limit him to about 30 games. I still feel bad for Talbot being traded to Philly and then ending up being the number 3 goalie some nights, and it just didn't make sense. So once Elliott was healthy and you had Carter Hart playing really well, it didn't make any sense. And so Talbot may very well get a fresh start with Calgary. That could happen on July 1st. So we're hearing about where some players could potentially go, and we'll see what happens in 3 more days. So it's exciting. Weekend's on the way. I have an update on tomorrow's meetup, which I will be posting a video of, along with discussing the meetup for next week as well. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video, and I'll talk to you again soon.